Captain Jake Harrison sat in his command chair, reading the message from the Galactic Council for the third time. His hands gripped the tablet so hard his knuckles turned white. 3 years. 3 long years of waiting, hoping, and playing by their rules. And for what? Another rejection. The bridge of the USS Defiance was quiet. Too quiet. Every crew member could feel the tension in the air. They had all hoped this time would be different. They had all believed that maybe, just maybe, the aliens would finally see humans as equals. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Wade stood at her station, watching her captain's face grow darker with each word he read. She had served under Harrison for 5 years. She knew that look. It was the same look he had when pirates attacked their supply convoy near Titan. It was the look of a man who had reached his limit. "Sir," Communications Officer Danny Price said, softly, "there's more incoming from Earth Command." Harrison looked up from the tablet. His blue eyes were cold now, colder than Lisa had ever seen them. "Put it through." Admiral Susan Blake's face appeared on the main screen. Her expression was grim. "Jake, I'm afraid the news gets worse. The Altarians have officially rejected our colony applications. They're citing our warmongering nature as the reason." "Warmongering nature?" Dr. Amy Foster looked up from her medical station. Her voice was filled with disbelief. "We've saved 3 of their worlds from plague outbreaks. We've given them our medical technology for free." "Admiral," Blake nodded sadly. "It doesn't matter, Amy. They've made up their minds about us. The Kepler colonies are being shut down. Our people have 48 hours to evacuate." Chief Engineer Pete Collins stopped his work and turned around. 48 hours? "Admiral, there are families there, children. Some of those people have lived on Kepler for 10 years. I know, Pete, but we have no choice. The Council has backed the Altarian decision. If we don't comply, they're threatening to cut off all trade with Earth." Harrison stood up slowly. The bridge crew watched him pace to the main view screen. Outside, the stars looked peaceful, beautiful. But Harrison knew better now. Those stars belonged to aliens who would never accept humanity as equals. "What about the Zephyrians?" he asked. Blake's face grew even more serious. "They've impounded all human cargo in their space. They're claiming it's for security inspections. But we both know that's not true. They're stealing our goods and selling them to other species. And the Council? The Council says it's an internal Zephyrian matter. They won't intervene." Harrison laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Of course they won't. They never do when it comes to humans." Lisa stepped forward. "Captain, what are our orders?" Harrison was quiet for a long moment. He looked at each of his crew members. These were good people, brave people. They had followed him through battles with space pirates. They had worked alongside him to save alien worlds from disasters. They had believed, just like he had, that humans could find their place in the galaxy through kindness and cooperation. "Danny," Harrison said finally, "open a channel to Earth Command." "Channel open, sir." "Admiral Blake, I have a question for you." "Go ahead, Jake. In all your years of service, have you ever seen the aliens show us any real respect? Any real gratitude? Any sign that they see us as anything more than useful pets?" Blake was quiet for a moment. "No, Jake, I haven't. Neither have I. We've saved their worlds. We've shared our technology. We've followed their laws even when those laws were designed to keep us down. And what do we have to show for it?" "Jake, what are you thinking?" Harrison turned to face his crew. "I'm thinking that maybe it's time we stopped asking for permission." The bridge was silent. Everyone understood what the captain was suggesting. For 3 years, humanity had played by the galactic community's rules. They had been diplomatic. They had been patient. They had been kind. And where had it gotten them? "Sir," Danny said quietly, "are you sure about this?" Harrison looked at the young communications officer. Danny was barely 25 years old. He had joined the fleet believing that humans would eventually find their place among the stars. Harrison remembered being that hopeful once. "Danny, how many human children are going to be displaced when the Kepler colonies shut down?" Danny checked his computer. "About 15,000, sir." And how many humans have died because the Zephyrians won't let our medical supplies through their space? Dr. Foster answered this time. Over 2,000 in the last 6 months alone. And how many times have we been told that we're too aggressive, too emotional, too young to have a real voice in galactic affairs? No one answered. They all knew the number was too high to count. Harrison walked back to his command chair but didn't sit down. Admiral, I want you to send a message to every human ship in space, every captain, every crew, every single person serving in the Terran fleet. What message, Jake? Tell them that the age of asking politely is over. Tell them that humanity tried to do things the right way. We tried to be good neighbors. We tried to earn their respect through our actions. Blake leaned forward on the screen. And what are you going to do now? Harrison's smile was sharp and cold. Now we're going to remind them why they were afraid of us in the first place. Lisa felt a chill run down her spine. She had served in the fleet for 8 years. She had seen human ships in action during the pirate wars. She knew what human weapons could do when they were used without restraint. The aliens had only seen humanity's peaceful side. They had no idea what humans were truly capable of. Captain, she said, are you declaring war on the Galactic Council? No, Lisa. I'm not declaring war. War is what happens between equals. This is going to be something else entirely. Pete Collins stood up from his engineering station. Sir, what about the consequences? The other species might unite against us. Harrison turned to look at his chief engineer. Pete, let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a human Civil War documentary? Yes, sir. Several. What did you think of them? Pete was quiet for a moment. They were intense, brutal. The weapons, the tactics, the sheer scale of destruction. Those were humans fighting other humans, Pete. Humans who knew how we think, how we fight, how we plan. The aliens don't know any of that. They've never seen us when we're truly angry. Dr. Foster looked up from her station. Jake, you're talking about showing them our true nature. Are you sure that's wise? Harrison looked at the doctor. Amy Foster had saved thousands of alien lives during her career. She had worked tirelessly to help any species that needed medical assistance. She was one of the kindest people he knew, and even she was starting to understand that kindness wasn't enough anymore. Amy, how many alien species have tried to enslave humans? 4 that we know of. How many have tried to wipe us out completely? 2. And how many have ever thanked us for saving their worlds? Amy was quiet for a long moment. None, sir. Not one. Harrison nodded. The galaxy has made its choice about humanity. They see us as children to be managed, pets to be controlled, or threats to be contained. They don't see us as equals, and they never will. So what do we do? Lisa asked. Harrison sat down in his command chair and looked at each of his crew members. These people had followed him through 3 years of disappointment and rejection. They deserved better than endless humiliation at the hands of alien bureaucrats. We stop being what they want us to be, he said quietly. We stop being the helpful, harmless humans who always follow the rules. We stop pretending that patience and kindness will eventually win their hearts. And what do we become instead? Danny asked. Harrison's eyes grew cold as winter stars. We become what we've always been, Danny. We become the apex predators of Earth. We become the species that conquered an entire planet before we could even leave it. We become the humans who built weapons that could destroy worlds and then chose not to use them. The bridge was silent except for the quiet hum of the ship's engines. Admiral Blake, Harrison said finally, please send that message to every human in space. Tell them that the time for diplomacy is over. Tell them that humanity is done asking for permission. And then, Harrison smiled, and it was not a pleasant smile. And then we remind the galaxy why patience is not the same thing as weakness. Commander Rick Stone watched the Zephyrian space station grow larger on his view screen. The massive structure had been blocking human ships from docking for 8 months. Every time a human trader approached, they were turned away with insults and threats. The station administrator, a fat Zephyrian named Kextal, had personally called humans disease-carrying primitives during the last diplomatic meeting. Today, that was going to change. The USS Vengeance moved through space like a predator stalking its prey. Stone's crew was ready. They had been ready for months. Lieutenant Jenny Adams sat at the weapons station, her fingers dancing over the controls. She had been running battle simulations every day since they received their new orders from Earth. Commander, Communications Officer Billy Clark said, "We're receiving a transmission from the station." "Put it through," Stone replied. The ugly face of Kextal appeared on the main screen. His 4 eyes looked angry, and his tentacles waved in what Stone had learned was a sign of extreme irritation. "Human vessel," Kextal's voice was high and squeaky. "You are not welcome here. Turn around and leave immediately, or we will call the Galactic Council." Stone smiled. It was not a friendly smile. "Station Administrator Kextal, this is Commander Rick Stone of the Terran Fleet. You have exactly 10 minutes to release all human cargo you've stolen and transfer compensation to our accounts." Kextal's eyes bulged. "Stolen? How dare you accuse us of theft? We have every right to inspect suspicious cargo." 9 minutes and 30 seconds, Stone said calmly. "You have no authority here, human. This station is under Zephyrian law." 8 minutes. On the station, alarms began to sound. Stone could see small Zephyrian fighters launching from the docking bays. There were 12 of them, tiny compared to the Vengeance. The Zephyrians probably thought their numbers would scare the humans away. They were wrong. "Jenny," Stone said, quietly, "target their fighters." "Targets locked, sir." 7 minutes, Kextal. The Zephyrian administrator was now shouting into his communicator, probably calling for help from other stations. Stone didn't care. Help wouldn't arrive in time, and even if it did, it wouldn't matter. "You're bluffing!" Kextal screamed. 1. Human ship cannot defeat an entire station. 6 minutes. The Zephyrian fighters were moving into attack formation. Stone had seen their tactics before. They would try to swarm the human ship, attacking from multiple directions at once. It might have worked against other species. It wouldn't work against humans. "Sir," Jenny said, "the fighters are powering weapons." "Are they now?" Stone leaned back in his chair. "Well, I suppose they've made their choice." "Jenny, show them what human weapons can do." The Vengeance's plasma cannons fired once, just once. All 12 Zephyrian fighters vanished in balls of fire and metal. The weapons that had taken the Zephyrians years to build were destroyed in less than 3 seconds. On the station, Kextal's mouth hung open. His 4 eyes stared at the empty space where his fighters had been. "Impossible," he whispered. 5 minutes, Stone said. Now the station's defense systems came online. Massive energy cannons emerged from hidden ports on the station's surface. The Zephyrians had built their station to withstand attacks from entire fleets. Their shields were supposed to be unbreakable. Stone had read the technical specifications. The shields could absorb energy equal to 50 standard starship weapons, firing continuously for an hour. It was impressive engineering. It wasn't impressive enough, Jenny. "Target their shield generators." "Targeting, sir." The Vengeance fired again. This time Stone made sure the attack was recorded on every frequency. He wanted the entire galaxy to see what happened next. The station's shields flickered and died in 4 seconds. The Zephyrians, who had spent decades perfecting their defense systems, watched in horror as their impregnable station became defenseless in less time than it took to blink. 4 minutes, Kextal. The Zephyrian was now frantically pressing buttons on his control panel. Stone could see other Zephyrians running around the station in panic. Some were trying to evacuate. Others were desperately calling for help on their communicators. "Please," Kextal said, his voice shaking. "We can negotiate. There's no need for violence." 3 minutes. "And Kextal? We tried negotiating for 3 years. You called us primitives. You spat on our diplomats. You stole our cargo and sold it to your friends. The time for negotiation is over." Stone stood up and walked to the view screen. "Billy, open a channel to the entire galaxy. I want everyone to see this." "Channel open, sir." "This is Commander Rick Stone of the Terran Fleet. For 3 years, humanity has tried to work with the galactic community. We have followed your laws. We have respected your customs. We have saved your worlds and asked for nothing in return. Stone paused, letting his words sink in across the galaxy. Today that ends. Today you learn what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. He turned back to Kextal. 2 minutes. The Zephyrian administrator was crying now. Actual tears were streaming down his ugly face. Please, Commander. We have families on this station, innocent people. So did the human colonies you helped shut down. So did the human traders you've been cheating for months. Did you think about their families then? 1 minute, Kextal. On the station, Stone could see Zephyrians running to the escape pods. Good, he didn't want to kill innocent people. He just wanted to send a message. 30 seconds. Wait! Kextal screamed. We're transferring the cargo now, and the compensation. Please, don't destroy us. Stone watched as his computer confirmed the transfers. Every piece of stolen human cargo was being returned, along with enough credits to cover damages and interest. Time's up, Stone said. The Vengeance's weapons fired one more time. Not at the station's population centers, but at its docking bays, its weapon systems, and its communication arrays. In seconds, the mighty Zephyrian station was reduced to a helpless piece of metal floating in space. But Stone wasn't finished. He had recorded the entire encounter, and now he broadcasted on every known frequency. He wanted every species in the galaxy to see what had happened. He wanted them to understand that the rules had changed. While Stone dealt with the Zephyrians, Captain Roy Clark was having his own conversation with the Altarians. Clark's battle group had surrounded the Altarian homeworld, their ships appearing out of hyperspace like ghosts. The Altarian Defense Force had tried to intercept them. 25 Altarian warships had moved to engage Clark's 5 human vessels. It should have been an easy victory for the Altarians, it wasn't. Clark's ships moved through the Altarian fleet like sharks through a school of fish. The aliens had never seen anything like human combat tactics. Where they expected honor and formal battle lines, they found speed and ruthless efficiency. Admiral Vexthor, the Altarian fleet commander, watched his ships die one by one. His flagship was the last to fall, its shields failing under the relentless assault of human weapons. How? He gasped as his ship's systems failed around him. How are you so strong? Clark's face appeared on Vexthor's screen. The human captain looked tired, almost sad. Admiral, you called us too aggressive to be your neighbors. You said we were too emotional to be trusted with colonies. You were wrong about one thing, though. What? We're not too aggressive. We've been holding back. Clark's ships moved into orbit around the Altarian homeworld. The planet's defense systems tried to target them, but human jamming technology made it impossible. The Altarians, who had ruled their sector for centuries, were suddenly helpless in their own home system. This is Captain Roy Clark of the Terran Fleet. Clark broadcast to the planet below. Your government has ordered the evacuation of human colonies in this sector. Those colonies will be restored or Altarian colonies will start disappearing. You have 24 hours to decide. On Earth, Dr. Amy Foster was preparing for her own mission. The same medical officer who had saved thousands of alien lives was now packing up her equipment. Her hospital ships, once symbols of human compassion, were leaving alien space. The Corvan hegemony had been particularly nasty about rejecting human medical aid. They had called human medicine primitive and dangerous. Their leader, Grand Healer Zixnall, had publicly mocked human doctors during a galactic medical conference. Foster's ships arrived at Corvan Prime just as a new plague outbreak was beginning. The Corvans had been depending on human medical technology. For months, though they would never admit it publicly, now suddenly that technology was gone. Dr. Foster, Grand Healer Zixnall called desperately. Surely you're not serious about leaving. We have thousands of sick people. Foster looked at the alien leader she had once respected. Grand Healer, 6 months ago you said human medicine was worthless. You said your people didn't need our help. I'm simply giving you what you asked for. But the plague is your problem now. Foster's ships jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Corvans to face their plague alone. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. Human doctors, engineers, and scientists were withdrawing from alien worlds. Species that had grown dependent on human expertise suddenly found themselves alone. Back on the Vengeance, Commander Stone received a priority message from Earth Command. Admiral Blake's face appeared on his screen, and she was smiling. Rick, I'm getting panic calls from half the galaxy. The Zephyrian government is demanding we arrest you for Atay. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was chaos. Representatives from dozens of species shouted at each other in the Great Hall on Nexus Prime. Some demanded immediate action against humanity. Others begged for mercy. A few sat in stunned silence, trying to understand what had just happened to their perfect galaxy. Council Speaker Thalvin, a tall gray alien with 6 arms, tried to restore order. His voice boomed through the speakers, but nobody was listening. The Zephyrian representative was screaming about war crimes. The Altarian delegate was demanding military support. The Corvan ambassador was pleading for medical aid as his people died from the plague. Order, Thalvin shouted. We must have order. But there was no order. The galaxy that had looked down on humanity for 3 years was falling apart in less than a week. In the human embassy building across the city, Ambassador Kate Morgan watched the chaos through her office window. She had been Earth's representative to the Council for 2 years. 2 years of insults, rejections, and condescending speeches about humanity's obvious limitations. Her communication device buzzed. It was Admiral Blake calling from Earth. Kate, are you seeing this mess? Morgan smiled. Oh yes, Admiral. It's quite a show. Half of them want to declare war on us. The other half want to surrender. And what? Are you going to tell them? Nothing. My orders were very clear. No more diplomatic meetings. No more negotiations. No more begging for scraps from their table. Blake nodded. Good. Because we're just getting started. The Admiral's image disappeared, and Morgan turned back to watch the council building. Alien security forces were trying to control riots in the streets. Species that had been allies for centuries were now blaming each other for the human problem. It was beautiful to watch. Meanwhile, in deep space, the real human fleet was finally revealing itself. What the galaxy had seen so far were patrol ships, exploration vessels, and diplomatic escorts. Now from hidden bases throughout human space, the true war machines emerged. Captain Nick Johnson stood on the bridge of the UHS Reaper, the first of the new destroyer-class ships. The vessel was twice the size of anything humans had shown the galaxy before, and it carried weapons that would have been considered war crimes if used against other humans. Sir, his tactical officer, Lieutenant Sandy Cooper, said, we're receiving the targeting data from Earth Command. Johnson looked at the list of targets on his screen. Every Corvan military base in 3 star systems. Every shipyard, every defense, platform, every weapons facility. The Corvans had been the loudest voices calling for human restrictions. They had blockaded human medical supplies to plague-stricken worlds, letting thousands die while they played politics. Sandy, are all weapons systems ready? Yes, sir. The new plasma lance batteries are fully charged. Johnson nodded. The plasma lance was a human invention that had never been used in combat before. It could punch through any known shield and destroy targets from incredible distances. The aliens didn't even know it existed. Begin the attack. The Reaper fired its first shots from 3 light minutes away. The Corvan defense platforms never saw the attack coming. One moment they were scanning space for threats, the next moment they simply stopped existing. The plasma lance didn't just destroy targets, it deleted them completely. Admiral Zekamore of the Corvan Defense Force watched his screens in disbelief as his installations vanished one by one. His flagship was the pride of the Corvan military, equipped with the best shields and weapons their technology could produce. How are they doing this? He screamed at his tactical officer. Where are they firing from? Unknown, sir. We can't detect any human ships on our sensors. That's impossible. Nothing can fire from beyond sensor range. But the attacks continued. Corvan military bases that had taken decades to build were erased in seconds. The aliens' proud warships exploded before they could even raise their shields. In 30 minutes, the entire Corvan military was reduced to scrap metal floating in space. Johnson's voice came over the communication channels, calm and cold. Admiral Zekamore, this is Captain Johnson of the Terran Fleet. Your government called our medicine primitive. You blocked our supply ships while people died. Now you learn what primitive really means. The Reaper finally appeared on Corvan sensors, but by then, it was too late. The massive human ship moved through the Corvan fleet like death itself, its weapons turning everything they touched into debris. But the military attacks were only part of humanity's response. On Earth, in a secret facility buried deep under the Rocky Mountains, programmer Alex Turner was launching a different kind of war. Turner had been working on cyber warfare systems for 10 years. His team had quietly infiltrated alien computer networks across the galaxy, planting backdoors and viruses that had been dormant for months. Now, with a single command, those programs activated. The Vegan Confederacy was the first to fall. Their entire defense grid, which they had bragged was unhackable, suddenly turned its weapons on their own ships. Vegan warships found themselves being fired upon by their own orbital platforms. "What's happening?" screamed Vegan Admiral Kickstall as his flagship was targeted by weapons that should have been protecting it. Turner's voice came through every speaker on every vegan ship. "Admiral, you called us barely evolved primates. You said our technology was thousands of years behind yours. I'm a 26-year-old human programmer, and I've been inside your computers for 8 months." The Vegan fleet watched in horror as their own technology turned against them. Ships that had ruled space for centuries became helpless victims of their own weapons. The Confederacy that had mocked human intelligence found itself outsmarted by a species they considered primitive. Similar attacks were happening across the galaxy. The hegemony worlds discovered that their communication networks were broadcasting human propaganda instead of their own messages. The Altarian banking system began transferring all their money to human accounts. The Zephyrian trade computers started giving away their cargo for free. Species that had called humans technologically backward were learning the hard way that humans had been hiding their true capabilities. The same race that had put computers in every home, that had connected their entire planet through networks, that had created artificial intelligence, had been pretending to be simple and harmless. They weren't simple, and they certainly weren't harmless. Colonel Ben Carter was proving that point on the ground. His Marines had landed on Hegemony Prime after the local government made the mistake of enslaving human colonists. The Hegemony had boasted that their warrior culture made them the finest soldiers in the galaxy. They were wrong. Carter's troops moved through the Hegemony capital like a storm. Where the alien warriors expected honor duels and formal combat, they found guerrilla tactics and overwhelming firepower. Human soldiers didn't fight for glory or honor. They fought to win. War Chief Grixamal, the greatest hegemony warrior, challenged Carter to single combat. It was their highest honor, a tradition going back thousands of years. Carter shot him. "We are not warriors," Carter explained to the shocked hegemony soldiers as he stepped over their leader's body. "Warriors fight for honor and glory. We are soldiers. We fight to win, and we fight to go home." The hegemony army, which had conquered dozens of worlds through strength and honor, surrendered in 6 hours. They had never faced an enemy that cared more about victory than glory. But perhaps the most devastating attack wasn't military at all. Captain Linda Park's intelligence division began broadcasting the truth about humanity's history. They showed the galaxy what humans had really done to each other over the centuries. The aliens watched footage of human wars. They saw the trenches of World War I, where humans had fought with poison gas and machine guns. They watched videos of World War II, where humans had built weapons capable of destroying entire cities. They observed the Cold War, where two human nations had pointed enough nuclear weapons at each other to end all life on Earth. "You were afraid of our emotions," Park's broadcast said to the entire galaxy. "You should have been afraid of our patience." The psychological impact was immediate. Species that had called humans too aggressive realized they had been dealing with the most peaceful version of humanity. Races that had labeled humans emotionally unstable understood that human emotions had been carefully controlled for their benefit. The Celestial Empire, the galaxy's oldest and proudest civilization, made the fatal mistake of trying to respond with force. They executed human prisoners as an example, broadcasting the murders across space to show that they weren't afraid of human retaliation. Commander Gary Mitchell's response was swift and terrible. The Empire's 3 core worlds, home to billions of aliens, were surrounded by human ships within hours. But Mitchell didn't attack the planets. Instead, he created a blockade that nothing could break. You want to see human savagery? Mitchell, broadcast to the Empire's leadership. You want to test our limits? Fine. Your worlds are now quarantined. Nothing gets in, nothing gets out. No food, no medicine, no supplies. You wanted to show the galaxy that you're not afraid of humans. Let's see how brave you are when your people start starving. The Empire's proud fleets tried to break the blockade. Their ships, built over centuries of technological advancement, threw themselves against the human perimeter. They all died. 3 weeks had passed since humanity stopped asking for permission. The galaxy was in chaos. Ancient empires that had ruled for thousands of years were begging for mercy. Proud alien races that had once looked down on humans were now too afraid to leave their home systems. On the Celestial Empire's capital world of Ethros Prime, Emperor Zixthul sat in his golden throne room, staring at reports he could barely believe. His empire, which had lasted for 10,000 years, was dying. The human blockade around his 3 core worlds was perfect. Nothing got through, nothing at all. Your Majesty, his military advisor General Carvel said quietly, the food riots have spread to 12 more cities. Our people are starving. The Emperor's 4 eyes looked tired. He had lived for 300 years and had never seen anything like this. What about our allies? Surely someone will help us. No one, Your Majesty. The hegemony has fallen. The Corvin military is destroyed. The Vegan Confederacy is fighting their own defense systems. Every major power is either dead or hiding. Emperor Zixthul had made the decision to execute human prisoners 3 weeks ago. He had thought it would show the galaxy that the Celestial Empire was not afraid of the young human race. Instead, it had signed his empire's death warrant. Above, his planet commander Gary Mitchell sat in his command chair aboard the USS Retribution. His ships formed a perfect sphere around the 3 Empire worlds. Not a single ship had broken through in 21 days. The Empire's mighty fleets, built over centuries, were now just debris floating in space. Sir, his communications officer, Lieutenant Tony Walsh said, we're receiving another surrender offer from the Emperor. Mitchell didn't even look up from his reports. Same answer as always, Tony. Tell him we'll consider his surrender when our people who died in his prisons are brought back to life. The Empire had thought they were teaching humanity a lesson when they executed those prisoners. They didn't understand that humans never forgot their dead. They didn't realize that mercy was a choice humans made, not a weakness they suffered from. On Earth, President Helen Price was receiving updates from military commanders across the galaxy. The war room in Geneva was filled with screens showing human victories on dozens of worlds. What had started as a response to alien arrogance had become something much larger. Admiral Blake, President Price said, what's the status of the Draconian Republic? Blake smiled grimly. They have requested permission to discuss surrender terms. Apparently, Captain Johnson's demonstration at their military academy was quite effective. The Draconian Republic had been one of the most vocal critics of human expansion. They had called humans violent savages and had refused to allow human ships in their space. Captain Johnson had responded by landing a single human shuttle at their most prestigious military school. What happened next became legend throughout the galaxy. Johnson had walked into the Academy's main hall, where 500 of the galaxy's finest military cadets were training. These were the children of generals and admirals, the future leaders of alien armies. I'm here to give you a lesson about human warfare, Johnson had announced to the shocked cadets. The Draconian instructors had laughed. 1 human against 500 trained soldiers. It would be a massacre. It was. Johnson had defeated all 500 cadets in hand-to-hand combat in less than 30 minutes. He didn't use weapons. He didn't use armor. He just used the fighting skills that every human soldier learned in basics training. When it was over, 500 of the galaxy's best young warriors lay unconscious on the floor. Johnson stood in the center of the room without a scratch on him. Class dismissed, he had said quietly, and walked back to his shuttle. The recording of that fight was now playing on every alien world. Species that had called humans primitive were watching a single human destroy their finest warriors without breaking a sweat. Colonel Ben Carter was proving the same point on a larger scale. His Marine division had landed on Hegemony Prime after the local government enslaved human colonists. The planet was supposed to be unconquerable. It was defended by the Hegemony's greatest warriors, soldiers who had trained their entire lives for combat. Carter's Marines took the entire planet in 18 hours. The Hegemony had expected formal battles. They had prepared for honor duels and ritual combat. Instead, they faced human soldiers who cared nothing for honor and everything for victory. War Chief Brixtal, commander of the planetary defenses, found himself surrounded in his own fortress. His elite guard had been defeated by humans who fought like demons. They came from the shadows, struck without warning, and disappeared before his warriors could respond. "This is not how war should be fought," Brixtal screamed at Carter when the human colonel finally appeared. Carter looked at the alien warrior with cold eyes. "You enslaved our people. You tortured our colonists. You declared war on humanity. Did you expect us to play by your rules? There are laws of war, honor codes, traditions that must be respected." Carter laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Honor? You want to talk about honor? Where was your honor when you put human children in slave camps? Where was your tradition when you sold human families to the highest bidder?" Brixtal had no answer. None of the aliens ever did when confronted with their own actions. "Here's a human tradition for you," Carter said quietly. "We don't start fights, but we always finish them." The Hegemony homeworld fell that day. The warrior culture that had conquered dozens of species surrendered to humans they had called weak and emotional. Their proud armies knelt before soldiers they had dismissed as children. But the most devastating blow came from an unexpected source. Dr. Amy Foster, the same woman who had spent years saving alien lives, was now watching them die. The Corvin. Hegemony had rejected human medical aid, calling it primitive and dangerous. Their grand healer Zixnal had publicly mocked human doctors, claiming that Corvin medicine was thousands of years more advanced. Now, with human medical support withdrawn, the Corvins were facing the full fury of the plague that had been spreading through their worlds. Their advanced medicine, which they had bragged about for years, was proving useless against a disease that human doctors had been quietly fighting for months. Foster stood on the bridge of her medical ship, watching the Corvin homeworld on her view screen. She could see the cities burning below as riots spread through the population. The same people who had called human medicine worthless were now dying in the millions. "Doctor," her assistant nurse Kelly Davis said quietly, "we're receiving desperate pleas for help from the surface. They're offering to pay anything for medical assistance." Foster was quiet for a long moment. She had taken an oath to help all sentient life. For years, she had honored that oath even when the aliens spat on her efforts. But there came a point where kindness became stupidity. "Kelly, what did Grand Healer Zixnal say about human doctors 6 months ago?" Kelly checked her files. "He said we were, quote, barely competent to treat animal diseases, let alone intelligent life." And what was his exact response when we offered to help with the plague? He said the Corvins would rather die than accept help from primitive humans. Foster nodded slowly. "Then we should respect his wishes. After all, we're just primitive humans. What do we know about treating diseases?" The Corvin plague continued to spread. Millions died who could have been saved by human medicine. But the humans didn't intervene. They had been told their help wasn't wanted. They were simply honoring that request. Across the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out. The Altarian colonies that had kicked out human settlers were now facing pirate attacks without human protection. The Zephyrian trade routes that had banned human ships were collapsing as their economies fell apart. The Vegan worlds that had called humans technologically backward found their own technology turned against them. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council was in complete chaos. Council Speaker Thalvin had tried to maintain order, but it was impossible. Half the member species were dead or hiding. The other half were blaming each other for starting the war with humanity. "We must do something," screamed the Altarian representative. "The humans are destroying everything. What can we do? Asked the Corvan delegate, his voice weak with despair. Our fleets are gone, our defenses are useless, they're too strong. They're not too strong, said the Zephyrian ambassador. We just never realized how strong they really were. The truth was, finally sinking in. For 3 years, the galaxy had been dealing with humanity's diplomats, explorers, and peacekeepers. They had never seen humanity's warriors. They had never faced the species that had spent its entire history perfecting the art of war. Captain, Linda Park's intelligence broadcasts were making sure everyone understood this point. Her psychological warfare campaign was showing the galaxy exactly what kind of species they had been underestimating. The aliens watched footage of human history. They saw the Battle of Stalingrad, where humans fought for months over a single city. They observed the siege of Leningrad, where humans ate leather and wallpaper rather than surrender. They witnessed the Pacific War, where humans fought island by island across an entire ocean. You called us too emotional, Park's voice said over the broadcasts. You said our feelings made us weak, but you never understood what human emotions really mean. The footage showed human soldiers Charo. 6 months after humanity lost patience, the galaxy was a very different place. The Galactic Council building on Nexus Prime stood empty and broken. Its grand halls, which had once echoed with the voices of proud alien ambassadors, were now silent. The species that had ruled the galaxy for millennia were gone, their empires reduced to ash and memory. President Helen Price stood at the podium in the newly built assembly hall on Earth. Representatives from every surviving species in the galaxy sat before her, their faces showing fear, respect, and something they had never felt toward humans before. Genuine admiration. The war was over. Humanity had won. But more than that, they had fundamentally changed what it meant to be powerful in the galaxy. 6 months ago, President Price began, her voice carrying to every corner of known space through quantum broadcasts. You told us we were too young to have a voice in galactic affairs. You said we were too emotional to be trusted with real responsibility. You claimed we were too aggressive to be good neighbors. The alien representative sat in perfect silence. The Altarian delegate, one of the few survivors of his species' leadership, kept his eyes fixed on the floor. The Zephyrian ambassador trembled slightly as memories of Commander Stone's attack flashed through her mind. You were wrong about many things, Price continued. But you were right about one. We are emotional. We do feel deeply. But you never understood what that really meant. On Mars, Admiral Susan Blake watched the speech from her new headquarters. The Red Planet had been transformed into the military command center for the Terran Protectorate. From here, human fleets patrolled a galaxy that had once dismissed them as primitives. Blake smiled as she remembered the early days of the war. The aliens had expected humans to fight like they did, with formal battles and honor codes. Instead, they had faced the descendants of creatures that had hunted mammoths with sharpened sticks and conquered their entire world before they could even leave it. Admiral, her aide Captain Tony Walsh said quietly, the former Celestial Empire has sent another request for food shipments. Their people are still starving. Blake nodded. Approve it, but make sure they understand the conditions. Full surrender, complete disarmament, and public acknowledgement of their crimes against humanity. The Celestial Empire, which had ruled the galaxy's core systems for 10,000 years, had fallen in 4 months. Emperor Zixthul was dead, killed by his own people when they learned that his execution of human prisoners had doomed their civilization. The proud empire that had called humans worthless animals now depended on human charity to survive. Captain Jake Harrison, now Admiral Harrison, commanded the fleet that patrolled the former Empire space. His ships moved through systems where alien civilizations had once flourished, ensuring that the new order was maintained. It was not a cruel occupation, but it was absolute. Sir, his communications officer, Lieutenant Danny Price, said, we're receiving a transmission from the Corvan remnant government. Harrison sighed. The Corvans were still dying from the plague that human doctors could have stopped months ago. Their grand healer Zixanal was long dead, killed by his own people when they realized his arrogance had cost millions of lives. What do they want now, Danny? They're begging for medical assistance again, sir. They say they'll do anything. Harrison looked out at the space where the proud Corvin fleet had once patrolled. Now there were only human ships keeping order among the scattered survivors. Tell them the same thing Dr. Foster told them 6 months ago. We're just primitive humans. What do we know about treating intelligent diseases? The irony was bitter, but necessary. The Corvins had rejected human help when it was freely offered. Now they would have to live with the consequences of their pride. Back on Earth, President Price was explaining the new reality to the assembled representatives. We offered you partnership, she said, her words calm but carrying the weight of absolute authority. You wanted subjects. We offered you progress. You wanted control. We offered you peace. You chose war. The Altarian representative, Ambassador Colvin, raised one of his 4 hands tentatively. Madam President, what happens to us now? Price looked at the alien who had once dismissed human colonists as unworthy neighbors. His entire home system was now under human protection after his own military had been destroyed in hours. That depends entirely on you, Ambassador. You can choose to be part of the new galactic community we're building, a community based on equality and mutual respect. Or you can choose to remain isolated in your own space, forgotten by history. The choice was real, but the power dynamic was clear. Humanity no longer asked for permission. They no longer begged for acceptance. They simply stated the terms, and other species decided whether to accept them or face the consequences. Dr. Amy Foster had returned to her work, but everything was different now. Her medical ship still traveled the galaxy, but now they went where humans decided they should go. Species that had once rejected her help now waited hopefully for any sign of human medical assistance. The Vegan Confederacy had been among the first to surrender completely. Their worlds, once proud centers of alien culture, were now peaceful member states of the Terran Protectorate. Their leaders had learned to genuinely appreciate the medical care that humans provided. Dr. Foster, Vegan Administrator Yixtel, said during her latest visit to their worlds, "How can we ever repay you for saving our people?" Foster looked at the alien leader who had once called humans barely evolved primates. His people were alive because human medicine had finally conquered the diseases that had been killing them for generations. "You can remember this moment," Foster said quietly. "You can remember that we didn't have to help you. We chose to. And maybe next time another species offers you assistance, you'll think twice before rejecting it." The lesson was being learned across the galaxy. Species that had survived the human reckoning were discovering that cooperation was far more beneficial than condescension. The new galactic community was based on respect rather than hierarchy. Commander Rick Stone, now Rear Admiral Stone, oversaw the integration of former Council territories into the Protectorate. The Zephyrian systems that had once banned human ships now hosted the largest human naval base outside of Sol system. "Admiral," his aide Lieutenant Jenny Adams said, "the Zephyrian Council has completed the War Crimes Tribunal. They've officially apologized for their treatment of human traders and colonists." Stone nodded. The Zephyrians had been among the quickest to adapt to the new reality. They understood that humans were not interested in revenge, only in ensuring that past mistakes were not repeated. "Good. Schedule a meeting with their trade representatives. It's time to discuss reopening the commercial routes." The galaxy was learning that humans could be generous partners, but only to those who earned that partnership through genuine respect and cooperation. The psychological transformation was perhaps the most complete victory. Captain Linda Park's intelligence broadcasts had shown every species in the galaxy exactly what kind of creatures humans really were. The footage of human history had shattered every assumption the aliens had made about their supposed inferiors. "We showed them our wars," Park explained to a gathering of human officers. "Not to frighten them, but to make them understand. Every species in the galaxy thought conflict was about honor and glory. We showed them that for humans, conflict is about survival and victory." The aliens had watched humans fight the bloodiest wars in known history, not against alien invaders, but against each other. They had seen a species that could build weapons capable of destroying worlds and then choose not to use them. They had witnessed the self-control that it took for humanity to rebuild after each conflict, instead of destroying itself completely. It was this combination of capability and restraint that made humans truly terrifying to those who had underestimated them. The transformation was complete when the young Zephyrian student Keltar approached Commander Stone during a diplomatic visit. The student had been born after the war, growing up in a galaxy where humans were respected rather than dismissed. "Commander Stone," the young alien said nervously, "I've been studying human history for my thesis. I have a question." Stone smiled. He remembered being asked questions by alien students before the war. Then the questions had been condescending, designed to show human ignorance. Now they were genuine requests for understanding. "What's your question, Keltar? Why didn't you destroy us all? Your species clearly had the power to wipe out every other civilization in the galaxy. Why did you choose mercy?" Stone's answer became part of galactic history, taught in schools across 1,000 worlds. "Because, kid, we're not the monsters you thought we were. We're not even the monsters we could be if we chose. We're just really, really good at war when you force us to fight one. The galaxy forgot that Earth's apex predator isn't the lion, or the shark or the bear. It's the human being who decided they've had enough." The young Zephyrian nodded solemnly, finally understanding the lesson that his elders had learned too late. 10 years later, the day humanity lost patience was remembered across the galaxy. Not as a day of conquest or destruction, but as the day the galaxy learned the difference between civilization and weakness, between diplomacy and surrender, between patience and submission. The new galactic calm.